The day I thought my family was safe, I realized the people I trusted most had already turned against me. My own daughter, the one I raised with love, schemed behind my back, and my wife was pulling the strings. By the time I understood what was happening, it was already too late, and I had no idea how deep this betrayal ran. Hit subscribe if you believe. Life always finds a way to balance the scales, because this story proves it. The house was unusually quiet that evening. I had just returned from work, exhausted and looking forward to a rare night of peace. As I stepped into the living room, I noticed the faint aroma of cinnamon and vanilla drifting from the kitchen. My daughter, Emily, must have been baking again. I smiled, imagining her flour, dusted hair, and the mischievous grin she always wore when she knew she was doing something just a little bit against the rules. "Hey, Dad," she called from the kitchen, her voice bright and cheerful. "Guess what I made?" I followed the sound and found her standing at the counter, carefully arranging chocolate chip cookies on a tray. She looked so innocent, so alive in that moment, that I almost forgot the stresses of my day. "They smell amazing," I said, kneeling to inspect them. "Did you use the extra chocolate chips, like last time?" Emily's eyes twinkled. "Of course! You know me. I never cut corners." Her enthusiasm was infectious. I felt a sudden warmth in my chest, a fleeting reminder of why I had always cherished these small moments. She was 12 now, on the cusp of becoming a teenager, and yet she still carried that spark of mischief, that innocence that made every father feel like the luckiest man alive. I glanced toward my wife, Lisa, who was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled when she noticed me. Lisa had always had a calming presence in our home. Even when the world outside was chaotic, she somehow made everything feel safe, controlled, as though no harm could ever reach us. "Long day?" she asked casually, setting her phone aside. "You could say that?" I replied, feeling the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. But seeing Emily here, well, it's a perfect way to end the day. Lisa's smile was warm. Almost too warm, though I didn't notice it at the time. Something about the way she watched our daughter, the small nods she gave Emily as if confirming some secret code, didn't strike me as odd then. I chalked it up to the motherly pride she always carried. We sat down to dinner together. Emily chattered endlessly about her day at school, about a science project, about how her friend had borrowed her favorite pen, and then mysteriously lost it. Lisa nodded along, laughing softly at the right moments. I tried to focus on their conversation, but a subtle unease lingered in the back of my mind. Perhaps it was nothing. Perhaps I was just tired. After dinner, Emily insisted I taste her cookies. I bit into one, savoring the sweet, gooey chocolate. "These are perfect," I said, genuinely impressed. Emily beamed. "See? I told you. Dad's the best critic." I ruffled her hair, and she giggled, hopping down from her stool and darting to her room. Lisa followed her with her eyes, the smile never leaving her face. Something about the way she watched our daughter made a small, nagging voice in my mind whisper, "Is everything really okay?" But I pushed it aside. It had been a long day, and I wanted to believe that everything was as simple as it seemed. The next few days passed in the usual rhythm of our lives. I went to work, Lisa managed the house, and Emily attended school sports and her little adventures. Life felt steady, almost predictable, but I began to notice tiny details, small inconsistencies in Emily's stories, slight hesitations when Lisa asked her questions. At first, I ignored them. Kids lied sometimes, I told myself. Mothers coached them to avoid trouble. Nothing to worry about. Yet the unease grew, subtle but persistent. One afternoon, I returned home earlier than usual to find Lisa in the living room, her laptop open, a faint smirk playing on her lips. Emily was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Emily?" I asked. "She's at a friend's house," Lisa said smoothly, not even glancing up. "Just hanging out for a while. Don't worry about her." Her tone was casual, too casual. I felt a flicker of irritation. "She didn't tell me she was going." Lisa shrugged. "She's 12. She can manage." I nodded, trying not to let my frustration show. Perhaps I was overthinking. But when I entered Emily's room later, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten a half. Empty notebook on her desk. The pages filled with notes that didn't make sense to me. Names, dates, and cryptic symbols. Nothing like the schoolwork I knew she had. I flipped through a few pages and felt a strange chill. What was she writing? I asked her about it that evening. Emily's initial reaction was defensive, almost nervous. "It's just my project," she said quickly, avoiding my gaze. "For school." I nodded, trying to mask my worry. "All right, but let me see it tomorrow. I like to keep track of your projects." She muttered something about being too busy, then ran off to her room. Lisa didn't say anything, but I caught the faintest flicker of amusement on her face. I couldn't tell if it was relief, pride, or something else entirely. Something small, something almost imperceptible, that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Over the next few weeks, the subtle oddities continued. Emily started acting more secretive, sneaking texts on her phone, spending longer hours in her room. Lisa seemed oblivious when I brought it up, though I could swear I caught her observing me more than once, as if she knew something I didn't. One evening, as I sat reading in the living room, Emily came down with a tray of drinks. She smiled at me a little too brightly. "I made your favorite," she said. I took the cup from her, nodding in appreciation. "Thanks, sweetheart." Lisa entered the room then, and everything seemed normal again, like a perfectly rehearsed scene in a play. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being orchestrated, that Emily and Lisa shared some silent understanding that I was not part of. It was during dinner that the first real crack appeared. Emily, usually cheerful and open, refused to answer a simple question about her day. Her eyes darted to Lisa, and then back to me. Something unspoken passed between them, and I felt an invisible wedge push between us. "Emily, is something wrong?" I asked cautiously. "No, Dad. Everything's fine," she said quickly, her tone clipped. Lisa's gaze met mine, calm and reassuring. "She's just tired, honey. Don't push it." I felt my stomach tighten. Their coordinated response was too smooth, too practiced. I laughed nervously, trying to dismiss it. "I'm imagining things," I told myself. "I just need to relax." But that night, as I lay in bed, I replayed the day in my mind. The smirk Lisa had given Emily when she answered me, the fleeting shadow of guilt, or was it pride, that passed over Emily's face. A small, knowing suspicion began to grow in me. That something was happening right under my nose, and I was blissfully unaware. In the days that followed, my suspicion turned into unease. Emily's behavior became more secretive, more deliberate. She avoided eye contact, whispered on the phone, and sometimes laughed quietly when she thought I wasn't watching. Lisa, as always, seemed to float above the fray, her expressions carefully measured, her attention calculated. I tried talking to her about it, subtly at first. "Have you noticed Emily acting differently?" I asked one evening while we cleaned up the kitchen. Lisa looked at me, eyes wide in mock surprise. "Acting differently. She's a normal kid, sweetie. Maybe you're imagining things." Her tone was gentle, almost coaxing. And yet, the words failed to settle my mind. The more she reassured me, the more I felt a tangle of uncertainty tighten inside me. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But every fiber of my being whispered that I was being manipulated, that I was already being left behind in a game I didn't even know had started. It all came to a head one ordinary Thursday afternoon. I returned home to find the house eerily silent. Emily's room was empty, and Lisa was sitting at the kitchen table, casually flipping through a magazine. "Where's Emily?" I asked, tension creeping into my voice. "She's with her friend," Lisa replied, the same smooth, unwavering tone she always used. "Out for a while." I frowned. Something felt off. My heart started to pound as I moved toward the staircase. On a hunch, I went to Emily's room, and that's when I saw it, the notebook, open to a page filled with detailed plans, lists, and notes that were clearly not for school. Names of classmates, schedules, even little notes about how to manipulate situations to her advantage. My chest tightened. I picked up the notebook, scanning the pages in disbelief. This wasn't just a project. This was something else entirely. Something calculated. Lisa entered the room behind me. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me. "Found something interesting?" she asked casually. I looked up at her, panic rising. What is this?" She smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. "It's just Emily being creative," she said softly. But I could see it in her eyes. She knew more than she was letting on. She had always known. For the first time in my life, I felt a pang of fear, not for myself, but for the family I thought I knew. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I was already behind, and whatever game had started, my wife and daughter were playing it without me. That night, I lay awake, listening to the faint creak of the floorboards as Lisa and Emily moved about. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, that the family I had built, the trust I had cherished, was on the brink of unraveling, and I had no idea how deep the betrayal would go. The days after I discovered Emily's notebook felt like walking on a tightrope. Every smile, every casual word from my daughter, seemed loaded with hidden meaning. I tried to act normal, to maintain the illusion that I hadn't seen anything, but the quiet anxiety in my chest refused to fade. Something had shifted, and I was painfully aware that I was already behind, watching a game unfold that I didn't understand. Emily, as if sensing my unease, became more careful. She smiled when I entered the room, laughed when I made a joke, but there was a calculated precision to her movements now. A subtle way of reminding me that she was always one step ahead. I tried to catch her in a lie, to see if the notebook's plans were being executed, but she had learned well. Every question I asked, every casual check-in I made, was deflected effortlessly. Lisa, meanwhile, remained her calm, composed self. It was infuriating. Her serene presence was no longer comforting. It was a wall, a reminder that I was excluded. I began noticing small things I hadn't before. The way she lingered a second, too long near Emily's room. The brief flicker of amusement when I looked confused, and how carefully she monitored my reactions to her daughter's behavior. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but a deeper, almost irrational fear held me back. One evening, I came home to the smell of baked goods again. Emily had a tray of cupcakes, each decorated with colorful icing. She greeted me with her usual enthusiasm, but I noticed the way her eyes darted toward Lisa, seeking silent approval before she spoke to me. "Daddy, look what I made today," she said brightly, holding up the tray. "Beautiful," I said, forcing a smile. "You've outdone yourself." Emily beamed. "Thanks." Mom helped a little, but mostly it was me. Lisa looked up from her laptop, her smile soft but knowing. "Yes, honey did most of the work," she said. Her voice was warm, reassuring, and yet there was an undercurrent to it, a subtle reinforcement that Emily and I were a team, that Lisa had allowed to exist on her terms. As I took a bite of a cupcake, I realized I wasn't hungry. The sweetness was almost sickly, masking the bitter truth that was slowly taking root in my mind. I was no longer in control. My daughter, the child I had raised with love and trust, was growing into someone I couldn't recognize, and my wife knew exactly what was happening. The first real confrontation came unexpectedly. I had planned a small father-daughter outing that Saturday, a trip to the park, just the two of us. I wanted to reconnect, to remind Emily that our bond was unshakable. But when I mentioned it during breakfast, her reaction was peculiar. "Oh, Dad, I can't today," she said quickly, avoiding my gaze. "I promised Mia we'd work on a school project." Lisa chimed in before I could respond. "Maybe another day would be better. She's busy, and we don't want her stressed." I froze. Something about the way she spoke, the calmness, the authority, made my blood run cold. My daughter didn't argue, didn't protest. She simply accepted it, almost relieved. And Lisa's tone suggested that this was exactly how it was supposed to happen. I tried to mask my frustration, forcing a smile. "All right, maybe next weekend." But inside, a storm was brewing. I couldn't shake the sense that I was being sidelined, removed from the life I thought I had built. That night, I went to Emily's room, hoping to talk to her privately. "Emily, can we talk?" I asked softly. She looked up, eyes wide and cautious. "About what?" "About us, about how things are changing," I said carefully. "I feel like you're keeping secrets from me." Her expression didn't waver. "Secrets? Dad, I don't have secrets." I tried again, softer this time. I want to understand you, Emily. I don't want to lose our connection." Her shoulders stiffened. "I'm fine, Dad." "Really?" It wasn't fine. I could see it in her posture, in the way her fingers drummed against the desk. She was hiding something, but she had learned the art of denial well. I wanted to press further, but I hesitated, feeling Lisa's eyes in my mind, judging my every move. Over the next week, Emily's manipulations became harder to ignore. She started subtly undermining me, hiding items I needed, giving answers I knew were false, and occasionally whispering things to Lisa that made me question my own memory. Lisa always appeared to remain neutral, though her small, almost imperceptible smirks betrayed her. One evening, I returned home early from work. The front door was unlocked, the house quiet. I expected Emily to be upstairs or in her room, but she wasn't anywhere to be seen. Lisa was in the kitchen, casually sipping tea, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Where's Emily?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Oh, she's out with a friend," Lisa said smoothly. "Why? Is that a problem?" "No, it's just strange," I muttered, unease creeping in. Lisa tilted her head, studying me carefully. "You're imagining things, honey. She's 12, she has a social life. Everything's normal." Her words were meant to comfort, but the way she said them, the tiny tilt of her head, the measured calm, it all screamed manipulation. And I realized with a sinking heart that I was already reacting exactly how she wanted me to. The next day, Emily came home with a sudden announcement. She had decided to stop taking piano lessons. I was stunned. Music had been her passion, her outlet, and she had begged me for years to continue. "Emily, why?" I asked, trying to hide my shock. "Mom said it was okay," she replied, her tone casual. I don't want to anymore." Lisa's eyes met mine across the kitchen table, calm and knowing. "It's her choice, dear," she said softly. "We can't force her to do something she doesn't want." I wanted to argue, to demand she reconsider, but the look on Lisa's face silenced me. I felt my authority slipping, undermined not by malice, but by a meticulously calculated plan that I couldn't yet fully understand. That evening, I tried one more time to reach Emily. "Listen, I want to help you," I said gently. "If there's something wrong, you can tell me. I'm here for you." She glanced at Lisa before answering, and something in that brief exchange made my blood run cold. "I'm fine, Dad." "Really? Stop worrying so much," The words were innocuous, but the intention behind them was unmistakable deflection. Denial, control, and Lisa, watching silently from the doorway, was the architect of it all. It wasn't just emotional manipulation. I began noticing small, calculated acts that affected the household in subtle but powerful ways. I'd find misplaced bills, things hidden from me, small embarrassments orchestrated by Emily with Lisa's guidance. I realized that I was being pushed out of the decision-making, stripped of influence in my own home, and no one, including my daughter, needed to say a word for it to happen. One night, as I lay awake in bed, the truth hit me. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't typical teenage rebellion. This was deliberate, and my wife had known all along. Every look, every gentle rebuke, every piece of advice she had given Emily had been part of a larger strategy. A strategy designed to make me doubt myself, question my judgment, and ultimately become powerless in the home I had built. I felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and fear. Anger at my daughter, who was growing into someone I barely recognized. Disbelief at my wife, whose calm, composed demeanor masked the manipulations that were slowly eroding me. And fear that I had already lost control and didn't even know how far the game had gone. The days turned into weeks, each one more draining than the last. I tried reasoning, guiding, and even pleading with Emily. But nothing worked. Every effort was deflected. Every challenge neutralized. And all the while, Lisa remained the quiet orchestrator, a conductor behind the scenes, pulling strings I couldn't see. The final straw came one evening, when I discovered that Emily had somehow convinced her school counselor to change her extracurricular schedule without telling me. I was furious, but when I confronted Lisa, she looked at me with serene calm. "Maybe it's time to let her make her own choices," she said gently. But the glint in her eyes betrayed the truth. This was exactly what she had planned. For the first time, I felt truly alone in my own home. My daughter had turned against me in ways I couldn't yet fully comprehend, and my wife was the mastermind behind it all. The foundation of trust, love, and control that I had relied upon was crumbling, and I was left to watch helplessly as the first cracks widened into a canyon. The morning air was crisp as I walked into the kitchen, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach that had been growing for weeks. Emily was sitting at the table, sipping her juice, her posture calm and collected. Too calm. Lisa was beside her, reading something on her tablet, but occasionally glancing at me with that same serene, knowing expression. I tried to act normal, though my mind was racing. I had been keeping a journal for the past several days, documenting every odd behavior, every subtle manipulation. I was determined to understand what was happening, to catch Emily in some undeniable act. But now, as I looked at her, I realized that the notebook, the lies, and the manipulations were just the beginning. "Good morning," I said cautiously. "Morning, Dad," Emily replied sweetly, her tone innocent, but the faintest hint of amusement lingered beneath it. Lisa looked up from her tablet, smiling. "Did you sleep well, dear?" she asked. Her eyes flicked to Emily for a brief moment, just long enough for me to see the silent communication between them. I froze. That was it. That small exchange. It wasn't just a glance. It was confirmation. They were in this together. My daughter wasn't acting alone, and my wife had been the guiding hand all along. "Emily," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on? I found your notebook, and it's not just schoolwork. What are you really doing?" Emily tilted her head, looking at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Notebook? Oh, that? Dad, it's just a project I'm working on. Nothing serious." Lisa's calm voice intervened before I could push further. "Honey, maybe you should let her explain it herself." But I wasn't going to be stopped. "No, Lisa, I want the truth. Now, what's happening in this house?" I feel like I've been shut out of everything." Emily looked down, fingering the edge of her glass. For the first time, I thought I saw hesitation, a crack in the facade. "Dad, I wanted to do things my way," she whispered. "Your way?" I asked, disbelief rising. "Manipulating situations, lying to me, undermining my authority. How is that okay?" Lisa placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, her touch firm but comforting. "It's not about being okay, dear. It's about growth. Independence. Learning to navigate the world." I stared at her, unable to comprehend the calm logic she was using to justify what I could only describe as betrayal. Every instinct in me screamed that I had been outmaneuvered, and now the evidence was staring me in the face. Emily's voice grew stronger. "Dade, I didn't mean to hurt you. But I thought you'd understand. I've been trying to take control of things, and Mom helped me figure out how." It hit me like a physical blow. My own daughter, the child I had loved and nurtured, had plotted against me, with my wife orchestrating every step. The betrayal wasn't small. It was calculated, deliberate, and deeply personal. "Lisa, how could you?" I said, my voice shaking. "You've been helping her manipulate me." Lisa's eyes met mine, calm and unyielding. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm teaching her responsibility. And maybe teaching you, too, about letting go." I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't guidance. This was control. This was power play disguised as a lesson. And I had been blind to it, fooled by her composure and the easy smiles we had shared for years. Emily stood, placing the notebook on the table. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said softly, almost sincerely. "But I had to do this. I needed to know what I could get away with. And Mom, she helped me understand how to do it without getting caught." I wanted to scream, to shout, to demand that they acknowledge the betrayal. But I was stunned, paralyzed by the realization that my family, the people I trusted most, had been working against me for weeks. Lisa's voice cut through the silence. "I know it's hard to accept, dear. But sometimes, the people we love the most need to be guided in ways that feel uncomfortable. You think you've been deceived, but in reality, you've been learning as well." I shook my head, disbelief and anger colliding in a storm of emotions. "Learning? This isn't learning. This is betrayal. You've been plotting to undermine me in my own home." Emily flinched slightly, but only briefly. "I didn't want to hurt you, Dad. But I needed to know, I needed to see what I could do." I turned to Lisa, my voice trembling. "And you encouraged it. You watched me being manipulated." Her calm smile never faltered. "I watched. Yes. But sometimes, the hardest lessons are the ones you don't see coming. You've been focused on controlling everything, on keeping the family exactly how you wanted it. I wanted to show you that you can't control everything. And Emily needed to see that too." I felt a deep ache in my chest, a sorrow I hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just about deception. It was about the unraveling of trust, the breakdown of a bond I had believed unshakable. My daughter had been groomed. My wife had been the guiding hand, and I had been left to watch, powerless as the carefully orchestrated betrayal played out. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" I asked, voice barely a whisper. Lisa's expression softened slightly. "Because, dear, sometimes words aren't enough. Actions, they speak louder, and you needed to feel what it's like to be outside the control you've always relied upon." Emily looked at me with a mix of guilt and defiance. "I didn't want to hurt you. I really didn't. But I had to see if I could do it. I had to know." The weight of the realization crushed me. My daughter, my sweet, innocent child, had been testing me, and my wife had guided her every step of the way. Every smile, every act of affection, every moment of seeming normalcy had been part of a carefully constructed plan. I sat down heavily at the table, gripping the edge as if it could anchor me against the storm of emotions inside. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. The family I had thought I knew was gone, replaced by something unrecognizable. Something that had been orchestrated with deliberate precision. Lisa's voice was calm, almost soothing. I know this is hard, but trust me, this was necessary. Necessary, I echoed, disbelief and heartbreak mingling in my voice. You call this necessary? Betrayal, deception. How is this necessary? Emily's eyes welled with tears. I didn't mean for it to go this far, but I needed to know I could stand on my own. And Mom, she helped me see how. I wanted to reach out, to hold them, to make sense of what had happened, but I couldn't. I realized then that my role in this family had shifted. I was no longer the guide, the protector, or even the authority. I had become the observer, the one who watched as the people I loved played a game I hadn't even known existed. For the first time, I understood the depth of the manipulation. My daughter wasn't acting out of malice, at least not entirely. But her actions were calculated, deliberate, and guided by the one person I had always trusted implicitly. My wife had orchestrated every move, teaching Emily lessons I didn't know were being learned and, in the process, breaking the foundation of trust that had held our family together. I felt a mixture of despair, anger, and heartbreak. The betrayal was complete, and the realization hit me with terrifying clarity. This was just the beginning. The quiet house seemed suddenly oppressive, the walls closing in with the weight of unspoken truths. My wife's calm, measured presence, my daughter's seemingly innocent gaze. Both had been tools, weapons even, in a game I hadn't known I was playing. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The betrayal was revealed. The cracks in my family were no longer subtle, they were gaping chasms, and yet, amidst the heartbreak, a spark of clarity emerged. I needed to understand everything, to uncover the full scope of what had been done, and perhaps to find a way to reclaim some control. But for now, I was left to sit at the table, staring at the faces of my betrayers, feeling the weight of their deliberate, orchestrated actions. And in that moment, I knew that nothing would ever feel the same again. The days following the revelation of Emily's betrayal felt like living in a fog. Every interaction, every word, every glance between Lisa and Emily reminded me that I was no longer in control. I tried to reclaim my authority, to re-establish the bond I had cherished with my daughter, but every effort seemed to backfire. The house, once a sanctuary, had become a battlefield where my presence felt unwelcome. Emily, once playful and affectionate, now treated me with a mix of caution and quiet superiority. She didn't mock me outright, but the subtle defiance in her tone, the way she measured her words, reminded me constantly of her victory. I caught her smirking at small things I didn't understand, little triumphs I wasn't supposed to notice. And Lisa, as always, watched from the sidelines, calm, collected, and utterly untouchable. One evening, I tried to sit down with Emily for a heart-to-heart conversation. I wanted to bridge the chasm that had opened between us, to remind her of the love we shared. Emily, I began cautiously, can we talk? I want to understand why you've been acting like this. I need to know. I need to understand you. She looked up at me, her gaze steady, almost adult, like in its composure. Dad, I told you, I had to see if I could do things my way. And I did. I'm not trying to hurt you anymore, but I can't go back either. Her words stung. The innocence I had clung to for so long was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I felt the tears welling up, but I swallowed them, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Lisa entered the room at that moment, her calm voice slicing through the tension. Maybe it's time to let her make her own decisions, dear, she said, as if I were a child needing guidance. You've been controlling everything for so long. Let her find her own path. Her words were like a slap in the face. Controlling. Was it controlling to care, to protect, to guide? Or had I truly been blind, oblivious to the way she and Emily had been maneuvering me? I couldn't tell anymore. All I knew was that I felt powerless, stripped of my role as both father and husband in the home I had built. The fallout wasn't limited to our private interactions. Small acts of rebellion and manipulation began to pile up like a dam threatening to burst. Bills were misplaced, appointments ignored, chores left undone, all seemingly minor, but cumulatively destabilizing. Each incident felt like a deliberate strike, a way to chip away at my confidence and sense of authority. And every time I confronted either of them, Lisa's calm logic and Emily's careful deflection left me questioning my own judgment. I tried to confide in a friend, hoping for some perspective. I don't know what to do, I admitted over coffee one afternoon. It's like they've turned against me. My daughter? My wife, I feel like I'm losing them. My friend frowned. Have you tried talking to them? Really talking? Not confronting, but explaining how it feels. I have, I said, shaking my head. But it's like talking to a wall. Lisa, she's always calm, always composed. And Emily, she's different now. Calculated. I feel like I'm losing them both. And I don't even know where to start to fix it. Returning home that evening, the tension in the house was palpable. Emily didn't acknowledge me beyond the bare minimum, and Lisa's serene presence was almost suffocating. I moved through the rooms carefully, as if every step could trigger another subtle act of rebellion. That night, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. Emily was in her room, whispering on the phone. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but the sound of her words carried through the thin walls. I told him it was fine, and Mom helped me make sure he didn't get suspicious. I think it's working. He's so clueless. The weight of the realization hit me like a hammer. Every manipulation, every subtle act of defiance, every smirk and glance had been part of a carefully orchestrated plan, and I had been blind to it all. I wanted to confront them, to demand answers, but I didn't know where to start. The emotional toll was heavy, and I felt a mix of despair, anger, and betrayal so deep it left me shaking. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty spaces where laughter and warmth used to reside, and wondered if I had already lost everything I cared about. The following morning, I tried a different approach. Instead of confrontation, I attempted to observe, to understand. I watched Emily carefully, noting the ways she interacted with her mother, the subtle cues and signals that I had missed before. Every movement seemed calculated, every smile a rehearsed act. And Lisa, she was always there, guiding, teaching, orchestrating, ensuring that I remained on the sidelines. By midweek, the consequences of their combined actions began to surface in tangible ways. Emily had convinced Lisa to adjust household rules subtly in her favor. Curfews extended, privileges granted, and responsibilities shifted. Each change, while seemingly minor, was a constant reminder that I was losing influence in my own home. One afternoon, I tried to regain some measure of control by addressing a household chore that had been neglected. Emily, the trash needs to be taken out, I said firmly. She looked at me, tilting her head with that unnerving calm. I did it yesterday. You must have forgotten? Lisa, appearing from the kitchen, added, Honey, he's tired from work. Don't worry about small things. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Even the simplest attempts to assert authority were neutralized before I could act. The house was no longer a home. It was a stage, and I was an unwitting actor in a play written by my wife and daughter. The emotional toll began to manifest physically. I lost sleep, lost my appetite, and felt a constant, gnawing anxiety that no amount of reassurance could dispel. Even mundane tasks felt impossible, weighed down by the tension that permeated every corner of our home. Then came the confrontation that would mark the deepest point of the fallout. I had discovered that Emily had once again hidden something important from me. This time, it was a permission slip for a school trip that I would have needed to sign. The realization that I had been deliberately excluded, manipulated, and ignored pushed me to the breaking point. I stormed into the living room, where Lisa and Emily were sitting, my hands trembling with fury. "This has gone too far!" I shouted. "How many times are you going to manipulate me? How long am I going to watch you undermine me in my own home?" Emily looked up, startled, but not afraid. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to feel left out. I just needed to see if I could manage things." Lisa's calm voice cut through my anger like a scalpel. "You've been trying to control every aspect of the house, dear. Perhaps it's time to step back and realize that not everything is yours to dictate." Her words, intended to soothe or justify, only made the betrayal feel sharper. I realized then that my role in the family had fundamentally changed. I was no longer the authority figure. I was no longer the guiding hand. I was an observer, powerless in the very home I had built, betrayed by the two people I loved most. I retreated to my study that night, closing the door behind me. For the first time, I allowed myself to cry, not just for the loss of control, but for the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the quiet, methodical way my family had turned against me. I thought about every moment I had trusted them, every small decision I had made for the sake of our home, and I realized how carefully each had been undermined. And yet, amid the despair, a small spark of determination ignited. If they thought they could orchestrate everything, if they thought I would remain passive, they were mistaken. I didn't know yet how or when, but I vowed silently that I would find a way to reclaim my place, to understand the full scope of their plans, and perhaps to turn the tables in a game I had been forced to play unwillingly. But for now, the fallout was complete. The emotional scars were fresh, the bonds fractured, and the family I had loved felt foreign. I was trapped in a home where trust had been replaced by manipulation, love had been replaced by calculation, and the people I had once relied on had become my adversaries. And in that silence, I understood that nothing would ever feel the same again. The house was silent when I returned from work that evening, the kind of silence that feels heavy, almost suffocating. I had spent the day observing, reflecting, and planning. After weeks of manipulation, subtle betrayals, and emotional exhaustion, I realized that passivity had only strengthened their hold over me. It was time to act, not with rage, not with helplessness, but with clarity. I called Emily into the living room first. She hesitated at the doorway, her eyes wide but guarded. Lisa followed, moving calmly as always, her expression serene yet unreadable. "Sit down," I said firmly, my voice steady. "We need to talk, all of us." Emily slid onto the couch, fidgeting slightly but otherwise composed. Lisa took her usual place across from me, her posture calm and deliberate, like a chess master waiting for the first move. "I know everything," I began, my gaze moving between the two of them. The notebook, the manipulations, the orchestrated actions, I saw it all. I watched you plan how to undermine me, and I know, Lisa, you guided her every step of the way. Lisa's serene expression didn't waver. "I guided her to learn responsibility, to see the world for herself," she said softly. "You've been too controlling, too focused on your own way. This was necessary, I repeated incredulous. "You call betrayal necessary? Deception, manipulation? Undermining me in my own home necessary?" Emily's voice trembled slightly. "Dad, I didn't want to hurt you. I needed to know if I could do it. And Mom, she showed me how to do it safely." "Safely," I shot back. This wasn't safe. It was calculated. You both played me. And I stopped, struggling to contain the wave of anger and heartbreak. I trusted you. I built this home on love and trust, and you've turned it into a game. Lisa leaned forward slightly, her voice calm and even. Sometimes, the hardest lessons come from seeing the truth yourself. You've always wanted to control everything. Perhaps it was time to see that even in love, control is an illusion. Her words were meant to pierce me, and they did. But they also revealed a weakness. I realized that Lisa's calm composure wasn't infallible. It relied on my inaction, on my unwillingness to challenge her openly. That was my leverage. Enough, I said, my voice firmer now. I'm done being a passive player in this house. I want honesty, real honesty. No more games, no more lies. From this moment forward, I will know everything, and we will rebuild this family on truth, not manipulation. Emily looked down, her fingers twisting nervously. Dad, I don't know if I can, I didn't think it would hurt this much. You hurt me already, I said quietly, pain lacing my words. But I can forgive if there's truth. I cannot forgive deceit. Lisa's expression flickered, just for a moment. That small imperfection was all I needed to sense that her control was not absolute. She had relied on the illusion of calm to keep me powerless. I leaned forward, keeping my gaze steady. This ends tonight, I said. No more behind the scenes maneuvers. No more hidden plans. We speak honestly, or we face the consequences of our fractured trust. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't realize. You should have. I interrupted gently but firmly. I raised you to understand right from wrong. I loved you, but love without honesty is meaningless. And Mom, you knew exactly what you were doing. Lisa's lips pressed into a thin line. For the first time, I saw a crack in her perfect composure. She realized that I had understood her orchestration, that the subtle manipulations and emotional control she had wielded could no longer hold power over me. I thought I was helping, she said softly, her voice losing some of its certainty. Helping? I repeated. By undermining me, by teaching my daughter to manipulate and deceive her own father. There was a long silence. Emily sniffled, wiping her tears. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered again. I thought you'd understand that I needed to do this for myself. I softened, taking a deep breath. I understand now, and I accept that you needed to grow. But the way you went about it, the secrecy, the planning, the deception, it broke me, and it broke our family. Emily's eyes met mine, genuine remorse shining through. I want to make it right, Dad. Please help me. I nodded slowly. We start with honesty. Every choice, every plan, everything we do in this house from now on, we do together. No more secrets, no more games. We rebuild. Lisa remained silent for a moment, then finally spoke. I see now that my guidance went too far. I wanted to teach her strength, but I see that I undermined you in the process. I'm sorry. Her apology was sincere. The tension that had gripped the house for weeks began to lift, though the scars remained. We were not whole yet, but there was a path forward, if we were willing to walk it together. Over the next days, we began to implement small changes. Emily shared her thoughts openly, asking for my guidance rather than plotting in secret. Lisa consciously removed herself from manipulative patterns, allowing me to reclaim my role as both father and husband. The house slowly began to feel like home again, though the lessons learned from the betrayal would remain with all of us forever. One evening, as we sat down to dinner, Emily reached across the table and took my hand. I'm really sorry, Dad, she said softly. I promise I'll be honest from now on. I squeezed her hand gently. I know you will, sweetheart. We'll work through this together. Lisa smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile this time. "We all will," she said. "No more games. No more secrets." It wasn't perfect. The wounds ran deep, and trust would take time to rebuild. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of hope. The betrayal had revealed the fragility of our family, but it had also shown the strength that could emerge when honesty replaced deception. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on everything that had happened. I realized that love alone is not enough to sustain a family. It must be paired with honesty, respect, and open communication. Betrayal can wound deeply, but it also provides an opportunity for growth, for understanding, and for the rebuilding of bonds that matter most. I understood now that Emily's actions, though hurtful, were a test, not just of my patience, but of my willingness to forgive and to guide her with clarity rather than control. And Lisa's orchestration, while misguided, had revealed weaknesses in myself that I could no longer ignore. The journey ahead would be long, but we had survived the storm. The calm after the betrayal was not easy, but it was real, and for the first time, I felt that we could move forward, together, as a family that had faced the deepest cracks of trust, and come out with the knowledge that honesty, even when painful, is the foundation of true connection. I closed my eyes that night, feeling both exhausted and renewed. The house was quiet again, but this time, it was the quiet of understanding, of lessons learned, and of a family willing to rebuild. Not on manipulation or control, but on love and truth. For the first time in weeks, I slept without fear, knowing that while the past could not be undone, the future was ours to shape together.